recording. And I'm going to work on the animations first. So I'm going to go to Piskel and open up the application. And I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. And so for the animations, I'm going to use a pretty small canvas because I don't want my character to be like way too big. So even though the character design was on a slightly larger canvas, I'm going to make the animations a little bit smaller. I'm going to do them at 32 by 32, should be fine. Not a lot of detail to work with, but that can be good sometimes. If you don't have a lot of detail to work with, sometimes it makes it easier, sometimes it makes it harder. It kind of depends on how complex your designs are. So I'm going to leave that default 32 by 32. And then I'm just going to choose one of the designs I created before to set up my animation. So I'm going to go to my game folder and look at my art and go to my characters. And so I have these 3 characters. I'm going to take a look at these. So these were the 3 different designs I did. Oh, it won't let me move between them. Okay, there we go. So I did the square guy, the circle guy, and the triangle guy. I kind of like the triangle one the best out of these, so I think I'm going to go with that. It's a little bit more limited. It doesn't have any arms, but I don't really know if I even need arms for this game. I may want to add them later, but I think I can get away without having arms. I can always add them to the animations later. So I'm going to go with this guy. So I'm just going to use that as kind of my basic reference. So I might leave this open over here so I can see it, and then go back to Piskel. Oops. And so I'm going to make a few different animations. There's a few different ways to organize this. I'm going to make the animations in separate files, but I'm going to start with just like a basic drawing, and then I'm going to make copies of that drawing to add the animation to. So that way I don't always have to like start from scratch, and there'll be kind of this like base character that all the animations come from. So depending on what software you're using, there's probably more sophisticated ways to do this. Like if you were doing Photoshop, you could do layers. If you're doing After Effects, you could do like different compositions. Since I'm using Piskel and it's pretty bare bones, I'm just going to make different files and just try to keep it organized myself. But there's no one way to do it. The thing I want to be able to do, and the thing that is often going to throw people off when they first start creating characters for a game, is if the main kind of like body section of my character doesn't line up for my different animations, there's going to be a lot of like goofy looking changes between animations. Because basically when we're doing an animation, let me do a little drawing. Need my end. Okay. Being slow. I think my computer, I might be doing too many applications right now, but let's try it again. On. Okay, it's not letting me open it. Let's try, I'll just do a drawing in Paint. Okay. So when we're doing a game, usually we have like our player. Say this is our player. And the player is going to move. But unlike in a traditional 2D animation, where you might have a player here, and then you might draw the next frame where the player is like lifting his leg, and like, you know, the player is moving as you're doing like the walk cycle or whatever you happen to be drawing. This is like the worst walk cycle ever, but You get what I mean? We're moving in space as well as animating the components of the character. This is like traditional 2D or just regular animation, but this is not what we do in games. Because in games, the game engine is actually what moves the character around. So the game engine moves the art from here to here. We've already seen that when we put our avatar into Godot and you added the keyboard input, you could see your drawing moving up and down and left and right, and the art was just staying in place. So that's what we have to keep in mind when we create our character animations and also anything moving in the game is that there's this in the game engine does the movement. We just want to move the legs and the arms and stuff like that. So when we create our animation, it's going to look like this. Let's say we're doing a walk cycle. We're just going to be animating in the same place. So let's say we have like 2 legs. We're just going to be drawing in the same place on different frames. And then the game engine is going to take those frames and it's going to, play them and move the character at the same time. So when we're creating the animation in Piskel, what we really, really want to be careful about is that each character that we draw is the same size. Because if we draw one character like this and then another one like this, it's going to flash in between those sizes in the same position, and it's going to look really weird. We want to make sure that each drawing is the same size, and then we want to make sure that even if we're animating a jump, our frames are all going to be down here. We're not going to like draw a frame of our jump that's up here. Everything is going to be here, and the game is what's going to make the character jump. So we have to be careful about that. That's the thing that I think is the most difficult to get used to when you're animating for a game. Okay, so I'm going to get started with like the base of my character. I'm going to go ahead and save this and just call this character base and click save as. And so I already have this folder open, but if I didn't have this folder open, I would go to my desktop and go to my game and go to my art folder and go to my character folder. And this is my character base. And this is just a Piskel file. So I want to save the Piskel file inside the art folder, not inside the game folder. So again, the Piskel file is kind of like our Photoshop file. It's not the actual art that we're going to export for the animation. Okay, so I'm going to get a greenish color. Oh, Sonora, are you? All right, you're very quiet. Sonora, did you have a question?
No, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to let you know I came in because I came in a little late.
Okay, no problem. I'm just kind of going over some animation stuff. So we're still pretty much at the beginning. But yeah. Okay, let's go back to the scale. I'm going to get a green color, and I want to draw a little outline to make it easier to draw my character from scratch. And now we're actually going to get to use our nice little preview window. So let's draw the character. I need to go to the pen tool. Actually, let's erase this. And I'm going to hit P to go to pen tool. And so I'm going to draw this kind of outline of the character. And I'll use the bucket tool to fill that in. Go back to the pen tool. I'm going to draw a couple legs. And this is just the base, so the character is not going to be doing anything yet. And then I kind of have this like light blue color for the eyes. So I'm going to draw the eyes like that. So yeah, I don't have a lot of pixels here, so I'm kind of limited with how much detail I can put in. So you could make a bigger drawing if you want to add a little bit more detail. But one thing is that we kind of have to, it may be a little tricky to get the design right with not a lot of detail, but you'll save a ton of time in terms of like redoing stuff. Maybe I can just make these eyes like this. Looks pretty good. Let's delete my background. And then he has like a very kind of like scary, jagged mouth. Maybe I'll just do like something weird, pixely like that. Okay. Yeah, that looks kind of cool. I don't know, whatever. You guys will probably do a much better job at this than I will. I'm more of a programmer than an artist, as I've mentioned. But anyway, this is good enough for my character base. The green is like a little too light, I think, probably for a game. So I'm going to try to get something a bit darker, maybe a bit more around here. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, I think that's going to be a little bit better. I think I can get it maybe a little bit more saturated. I think that'll be pretty good. Maybe just a little bit more. I can always fix this later, but okay. I think that's a pretty good color. So this is going to be my base. I'm going to save this. And now the tricky part that I'm going to do now is I'm going to keep Piskel open, but I'm going to make new files. So instead of like creating a new file and leaving Piskel and going back and forth, I'm just going to do save as a bunch of times. So it may be a little confusing, but I'll try to show what I'm doing. So I'm going to go to my art folder, go to the character folder, and change the view to list. And so right now you can see I have my original character designs, but now I'm working on my character base. And so I'm going to add some different files for my different animations here. So the way I'm going to do that is I have to go over here to save. And I'm going to start with like the idle animation for my character. So I'm going to say character idle. And idle is just like when the character is standing around. So anytime you're not moving the character, it'll be the idle animation. And the tricky part here is I have to make sure to click Save As to create a new file. So I'm going to click Save As and just put it in the same folder. Now you can see I have character idle here. And so now I still have my character base if I ever want to go back to the base of the character. So for the idle animation, you can really do whatever you want here, depending on how sophisticated you want it to be. We really just need something simple to show that the character is not, like the game hasn't crashed, basically. Like you don't want the character just standing there still because it won't look like it's alive. We want some really, really simple animation just to communicate like the character is still, still living and still will react to your movement. So all I'm going to do like the simplest animation possible. I'm going to duplicate this frame and I'm just going to make him blank. So I'm going to get my pencil and just take out most of these eyeballs. And let's slow the animation down just a little bit. Okay, so I'm just going to do a blank. That's literally all I'm going to do. I'm not going for like most sophisticated cool animation ever. I'm going for like simplest animation that will communicate what I want to communicate. Another thing that I want to point out here is if you want to make the blank more realistic, you might want to do something like, add a few more frames so it only blinks every once in a while. But we can actually do this in Godot. So right now we're really just creating the frames, but when we go into Godot, we're going to be able to do more with the frames, like add more frames or do different things with them. So it's not necessary to duplicate frames here because we can always do it over in Godot, and I'm going to show how to do that once we move over there. So I'm going to save my character idle, and then this is the first real animation that I'm going to use in the actual game, right? The character base is just the base to create the other animation. So I want to export my first animation. So I finished this animation and I want to export. I'm going to click on the export button over here. And I want to go to PNG, and this is going to be a sprite sheet. So I have to use sprite sheets for this to work in my game. Okay, so I don't really care too much about this. I'm not going to scale it up. I want to keep it the same size. So I'm just going to go with this one, and I'm going to click download. And now I'm going to put this in my game instead of in my art folder. The art folder is just for the original files if I want to go back and edit them. So I'm going to go to my game and go into the sprites folder and just save it here. So it's just going to be called character idle. Make sure it's in the sprites folder, and we're going to load that into Godot a little bit later. Okay, so I've got my first animation. I've just got a couple more to go. So the next animation I want is a really simple walk animation. And so I haven't really changed much here, so I don't need to go back to the base animation. I'm just going to save this again as a new animation. So I'm going to go to save, change this to character underscore walk, click save as, and put it in there. And now you see my character walk animation under my character idle animation. So I can always go back and edit these later. So I'm going to delete the blinking frame. And then what I'm going to do here, I'm going to do this so fast, it's going to seem ridiculous. And you guys a lot of you guys are probably animation majors, or maybe you've taken 2D animation. You might know how to do a walk cycle. I have some links to more sophisticated animation techniques if you want to do a real walk cycle. I'm just going to do a 2-frame walk animation because I really just want to show all we need to show life in a video game is just 2 frames, just like the idle animation. So for my first frame, I'm going to put one leg up here and one leg down here. And then I'm just going to duplicate it and do the opposite. So I'm going to move this leg up here, and I'm going to move this leg down here. I probably could have just like copied and pasted the legs if I really wanted to, but I think that'll be good. And now we can look at our preview, and I can speed this up a little bit, and that's really all we need. Once we add that to the game and the game moves the character around, it doesn't look, beautiful, but it'll communicate what's going on. We're walking. And so obviously, I think you guys will probably want to do more interesting, sophisticated animations, but I really want to show you guys that even the simplest animations, when we put them in a game, do give life to our characters. Okay, so I'm going to save this. This is my character walk. And I'm going to export this. So same thing, I just go to export sprite sheet and click download. And it already remembered that I want this to be in my game. So I'm going to export it again to my sprites folder. And you can see my character idle is right there. A couple more things. If you're using a software that's not Piskel, one of the reasons I'm using Piskel is by default, we're exporting PNGs that have transparency. So we can layer different components in our game on top of each other. We need our graphics to have transparency because otherwise they would just be like weird blocks that are blocking each other. It also makes sprite sheets that are very simple and uniform, which Godot is going to be able to import really, really easily, which we'll see when we move to Godot in a second. Okay, so I'm going to go to my jump animation. So again, I'm going to save a new animation. I'm going to call this character jump and click save as. And I'm going to delete this frame. I'm going to erase this frame. And for my jump animation, for the first frame, so a lot of times when you're first working on character animations, you might start like a jump animation with like the legs all the way down like this. But you got to keep in mind that in the game, when we want the character to jump, we're going to hit a button and the character is just going to immediately jump. We don't want like a pause before the character jumps. So as soon as you hit the button in the game, the character starts jumping and the animation changes. But we don't need these transition frames between standing and jumping or walking and jumping. We just need to start with the jump, and the animations will be put together. So the first frame of my jump, I'm going to kind of bend the character's legs a little bit. And we're also going to, programmatically, we're going to do a pretty simple jump. But you can, if you want to, program a jump. That was really bad. Okay. Oops. You can program a jump that has multiple stages. I'm not going to do that because it takes more time, but you can find code online to do that. Wow, I really can't. There's just not a lot of data here. I also stink at drawing. Let's just go down and then over. Oh boy, not a lot of room here. Okay, this is looking not great. Let's do down and then like that. Okay, that's good enough. And you can always change these in the future. So he's going to bend his legs a little bit. And I'm not going to move the character at all. Even though he's jumping, nothing, the character's body is going to stay in the same place. And it also has to be in the same place as when it's walking and when it's just standing around. That's why I haven't really changed the body of the character at all. So I'm just going to duplicate this frame with no legs, so I can just quickly redo this. So then when he's in the air, his legs are going to be kind of like going out like that. And then when he wants to land, he's going to stick his legs out like this to get ready to land. And looks kind of goofy, but it'll be good enough for the jump animation. Okay, so that's my character jump. Let's export that. I'm going to go to export, download the sprite sheet, and just put this in my game sprites. I have one more, which is the character getting hit if he like runs into a wall or gets hit by an enemy or something like that. There's obviously a lot of other states that you might want to add in the future, like the character dying or the character throwing a projectile or doing other stuff. You may want to add more animations in the future as you add more functionality to your game. But we're just going to start with the basics for now. So we've got character hits. I'm going to save that. So now we see all of our character animations nice and lined up here. And I'm going to delete these extra frames and erase these legs here and save this. And so for the character hit, I might actually move the body a little bit. So let's add a new frame. And I'm just going to use the main body as an outline, but I'm going to kind of push him back like that a little bit. And for his eyes, maybe I'll draw a couple like little X's. So I'll have to do something like that. And do like that. And let's add another frame. I need the green. So you'll kind of get pushed back a little bit. Oh, I forgot the legs. We'll go back and do the legs. And then his eyes will go like that, and his mouth will go like that. And then he'll go back the other way a little bit. So we'll swing him back that way. So we'll get kind of like a little reaction. Let's see, let's turn up the preview a little bit. Okay. Looks decent enough. I could probably do a better one, but this is good enough for now. And then let's go back and do the legs. So I'll just have the legs going up like that. And maybe out. And then like that. Okay, good enough. Looks kind of weird, but we want to just move on to the next part. So that's my hit animation. So I saved that. I'm going to export it. So I'm going to go to export and download. And here's my character hits. I'm going to click save. And so now I've got all the animations that I want. And I've got the original files in my art folder. And I've got the animations in my game folder. Okay, so now I can leave Piskel. I can always come back here if I need to make any adjustments or change the color or increase the size or something like that. But for now, I'm going to go into the game and add this guy in here. So if I go to art and I go to my game, let's see, where is it? Here's my sprites folder. And there you can see my animations. Let's go back to, I wanted to do large icons, but they're pretty small. Okay. So you can see what the sprite sheets look like here. They're pretty small. I did the animations really small. I might increase the size later. But depending on this sort of like units that you use in the game, it may be good to have smaller or larger characters. But that's basically what a sprite sheet looks like. It divides the frames that you're using into even squares so that the game can go through and actually read all those images. So this saves the game a lot of time in terms of like loading up images. But what a lot of games really will do is they'll have all of the sprite frames for a character on one big sprite sheet. And you could try doing that as well. I think when you're just getting started, it's good to keep things kind of simple. But when you create the animation in Godot, as we'll see in a second, you can actually add frames from one sprite sheet to lots of different animations if you want to. And you can also add frames from different sprite sheets into one animation. So we're really just creating like the basic frames that we're then going to use in Godot to make our animation. So let's do that. One thing that I do want to just show you guys real quick, I think at this point, most of us have at least started to create a scene in Godot, but there's a lot of setup that goes into creating the scene, like adding the input map and, getting your files and folders set up. So if you ever, want to just do that real quick, I've created a blank template that you can use. The link here is not updated right now, but if you go back to the labs page and you scroll down, there's a blank template here, which is the right link, and I'll fix the link for this one later. And that's going to download a zip archive. And so I'll show you guys what that looks like. If I go to downloads and I extract this archive, I'm just going to put it on the desktop. So inside this blank template, you can see there's an empty audio folder, there's an empty fonts folder, empty scenes folder, empty scripts folder. It's just a completely blank Godot project. But if you open it, what you'll notice is that all the things that you want set up are already set up. So if I go to project and go to project settings, and we haven't gone over this yet, but one of the things that you'll find in here is the physics layers, which we'll go over in a couple weeks. There's also all the input keys, which you can modify if you want to. So there's some basic things set up in here that can make it easier to get started, like using these folders and stuff like that. It's not a ton of stuff, but it does help get started a little bit more quickly. And then there's also, of course, the assets folder, which you can throw in there. So yeah, if you want to get started at any point on a new project, that's a good place to start. Okay, so now I'm going to put this stuff into Godot. Any questions before I do that? Okay, great. So yeah, that'll take a little bit more time, but we're doing good on time. We'll have plenty of time at the end of class for you guys to try this out. Let's just wrap this up. So I'm going to go back to my game, go into the game folder, and open up my project. And so let's see. So last time I created this scene, my first scene, and there's just some trees in here, and I just added this like player avatar, and just like with some basic art. And so all I'm going to do here is replace the art for the player with the animations, and then I'm going to add a different script to the player, which will trigger those animations. Remember, the player is its own scene. And so if I'm in here and I want to edit the player, I don't want to edit the actual player right here. What I want to do is click on the scene icon right here, and that's going to open up the player here. So I have this sprite here. I could just turn it off if I don't want to deal with it right now, or I could go ahead and delete it. Either way is fine. And we're going to add in our first animation. So not everything in Godot has to be animated, but having all of your different components, like your scenery and stuff like that with animations, does add a lot more kind of like life to the scene, and it makes the game feel more like a real world where things are moving and things are alive. So in Godot, making animations is very simple, which is nice. It's a pretty easy process compared to a lot of other different types of game engines and things like that. For the frame animations, they do have a more sort of like complicated animation player, which we're not going to go into today. But if you're trying to do like state changes and like different crazy stuff, you do have that ability in Godot. I'm going to just take the collision shape and reset the position real quick. And reset the player position. So I'm just going to kind of reset this stuff, and then I'm going to lock this up for now. And now I'm going to start with my animation. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and then go to player, and I'm going to click the plus to get an animation sprite, or an animated sprite rather. And so if I type in animated sprite, I didn't get all the way, but you can see I've got the animated sprite here for my new node. And I'm just going to hit enter. And right now it's above the collision shape. I'm not going to worry about that right now. I can put it below later. You can see the animated sprite when I first created. There's a little warning that says you need some sprite frames. And the reason that the sprite frames are separate from the animated sprite is you could have multiple animated sprites that have, that use the same sprite frames. We're probably not going to do that, but just to explain why they aren't the same thing. So the frames are set up over here in the inspector. Next to frames, you can see it says empty. So if I click on this, I'm just going to click new sprite frames. So I'm actually creating a new thing rather than loading sprite frames that already exist, because we don't have any sprite frames. So I'm just going to click new sprite frames. And then here's the part that's a little bit hard to remember, is that the way I edit the sprite frames is then to click on those sprite frames. And that brings up this animation window in the bottom of my main window. So again, to do that, if I'm just in my main window and I want to edit the animation, I have to go over here to the animated sprite and click on the sprite frame. And sometimes if I just click on the animated sprite, it'll open those up as well. So yeah, that's how I can get over here. So this is like a whole new window. There's a bunch of different stuff in here. I'm just going to go over the basics pretty quickly. So I'm not going to cover everything, but I'll cover most of the things that we need to know. So on the left side is our list of different animations, and we want to match those animations to what's in the code, which we'll look at it in a second. And on the right side is where we actually control the frames for each animation. So it starts with a default animation. If I want to rename that, I'm just going to click on it, and I'm just going to call this the idle animation. So that's the first animation that we're going to have. And now I can make that animation, or I can, create my list of animations. Let's go ahead and make the idle animation. So now I'm going to go over to this side, the animation frames, and add in the sprite sheet. So the first icon here is add a texture from file. And that'll work if I want to use that, but the one that's a little bit faster is add frames from a sprite sheet, which is this like little waffle looking icon here. So I click on that, and then I'm going to go to my sprites folder in my project, and you can see there's my cute little animation, my sprite guy, my little guys. I'm realizing now it kind of looks like a little bit like Andrew's pear character, so maybe I was channeling that character when I was drawing it. Anyway, so I'm going to take my character idle, and now I need to tell Godot how to cut up the sprites. So I'm going to click open, and it's very, very small, so I'm going to zoom in a lot. And you can see by default, it is trying to cut up the sprites, but it doesn't know exactly how to do it. And we have to tell it how many frames there are in the sprite sheet. And so there's one column, there's one frame across, and there's two rows, there's two vertical frames. So I want to change horizontal to 1 and then vertical to 2. And now you'll see the lines of these boxes line up correctly with the art. If you see the lines like cutting off the art, that means that you don't have the exact right number. So just move it around until you get the right number. So then I have to actually select the frames, which I do by just clicking on them. You don't always have to add all the frames, depending on what you're doing with the animation. Or if I had a sprite sheet with all of my animations together, then I would just select the frames for this particular animation. So I'm going to select those frames and click Add Frames. And now we see our animation for the first time. let's center the character a little bit. That looks good. The collision shape could probably be a little bit smaller. Yeah, that looks fine. Okay, that looks good enough. Let's put this back down here. So now it doesn't look like it's animating. That's because the animation isn't on. So now I have to look at the inspector on the right side. There's this playing toggle. If I turn that on, now we see that animation. So the reason they have that is because you might want to, pause or do other things with the animation. So as I mentioned before, right now it's just 2 frames. So it's just flipping on and off. But I might want to have more frames of the open eyes so that the blink looks more natural. I can do that really easily just by copying and pasting that first frame a few times. And I could even like copy and paste this one at the end, and then copy and paste this one a couple more times so it kind of blinks at slightly different intervals. Although I think I did the same thing. Let's see. Oh no, they're a little bit off. So yeah, you can make multiple frames. So now we're making a longer animation, but it's still just 2 frames of drawings. So then the speed looks pretty good to me. You can change the speed down here, but I'm going to leave it. And then the last thing that we can change is whether or not the animation loops. For most of our animations, we want them to loop. So I'm going to leave the loop on. Well, actually, for a couple of them, we don't. But for this one, we do. And so now we're good. That's our idle animation. Okay, so now let's add our other animation. So to add a new animation, I go back to the left side and click on the little plus page icon here. And so I create a new animation. I'm going to title this walk. And the names of these do matter. You can see that I'm using a capital letter and capitalizing the names. We're going to see in a minute that that matches what is in the code. And you don't have to use capital letters, but you do have to match what's in the code. So it's not going to work if you don't use either the exact same naming conventions or change the code to match whatever naming conventions you do use. Okay, so I've got my walk animation. I'm going to click on the waffle and just go through the same process. Click on the walk and zoom in a little bit. This also has 1 horizontal, 2 vertical. So I'm just going to select those frames. And then this one, again, it's going to loop. It looks pretty good. I don't really need to do anything else. I might want to speed it up, but I think it actually looks pretty decent. So let's just stick with that. So we just have 2 more. I'm going to create the jump animation. And so I'll click on the waffle again, character jump. This one is 4x4. So this one actually has different rows and columns. So the horizontal is 2 and the vertical is 2. And there's only 3 frames here. So I don't want to select this last frame. If you select the last frame by mistake, there's no art there, but you can always delete it. I can click select clear all frames, or I can select these guys. If I add a blank frame by accident, I can always just click on this trash can right here, and that'll remove that frame. So here's my jump animation. I actually don't want this to loop. I only want it to play once because we don't want him like wiggling his feet around in the air. So we're going to turn the jump off. But that makes it a little bit harder to preview because once it gets to the end, it stops playing. So I have to set the frame back to 0, but then it just plays once. So if I want to preview it, I can turn the loop on, and then I might want to adjust things. Like I might want to make this a little bit slower, depending on how fast the jump is. So I could make that 3 FPS. That might work. I can change it later if I need to. And once I'm happy with that, I'll turn off the loop. And then I'm going to make one more animation. I'm going to call this hit. And so I'll click on the waffle, click the character hit. Same thing here. Let's zoom in a little bit. And we have 2 horizontal, 2 vertical frames. We've just got 3 frames of animation though. And that looks pretty good. I don't want this to loop, but I think the speed is fine. It's just going to go quick. And so now I'm good with that. I'm going to hit Control S to save. And then I'm going to go back to here on the right and just change the animation to idle so that when I do put the character in the game what I'll see is the idle animation instead of one of the other animations. The code actually is what controls the animation when we play the game, but when we're editing the game, whatever we have set in there is what we're actually going to see in the editor. Okay, so we just have a couple more steps to go. I'm going to save this. And when I go back to my scene, we should see there's the player. It's already updated, right? Because we edited the player scene, and the player scene is inside the main scene. And so we don't really even need to adjust anything, but we do have to change the script. So I'll go back to this player, click on the main player node, and scroll down here. And I'm just going to get rid of this script. And we're going to use a script from the assets. So I'm going to click on scripts and load, go to 270 assets, go to scripts, and I'm going to find my player controller and click open. And for now, in this scene, we don't have physics enabled. And so there's an option for the player here to use gravity, but we don't want that option on. But I'm not going to do it in this version. I'm going to do it in the main scene. So it's just in that scene that the gravity is turned off. So I'm going to go to my first scene. I'm going to turn off gravity. I'm going to turn the speed up a little bit because generally that's, I feel like I always end up turning up the speed. And I think it should work now. I'm going to save this and preview the scene. And now, oh, the speed is too high. But now we can see the player moving. And we can see the walk animation. We won't see the jump animation quite yet until we add some stuff in here. But we can see that walk animation. Let's turn the speed back to normal. And there we go. We've got our animation. So you'll notice a couple things that are defaults here. When I walk to the right, my character faces right. When I walk to the left, my character faces left. I only did one walk animation. The code is flipping the art, so it looks like it's going in the right direction. You don't have to do it that way. You can add a whole separate animation for walking left, but this is generally how games like this will do it, so you can save time drawing and making these animations because everything takes a lot of time. And that'll be true when the character is jumping and when the character gets hit as well. So let's take a quick look at the code, and then we're going to do some documentation and upload our assignment. So I'm going to click on the script attached to the player. And what we're going to look at in here, there's a lot of code in here because the player does a lot of different things. But I want to show you guys the animation part. And that is in this animation update function here. So I'm going to collapse some of this code. And here's our animation update. And what I want you guys to see here is that the name of the animation is actually written into the code. It doesn't have to be that way, but it makes it a little bit simpler if we do it this way. So that's why you have to make the animations in the animated sprite. That's why it has to be exactly the same. So that's why if we look at the animated sprite, the names of the animations match what you see in the code: jump, walk, and idle. So it's capitalized, it's exactly the same. There's also the hit animation here. There's an animation for when the player dies. I didn't make that today, but we'll probably make that in the future. But yeah, so just to show that this animation, when we create the names of the animations, they have to match what is in the code. If these are, if I want to use different names, that's fine. As long as they match each other, that's what we need. Okay, so we're almost done. I'm just going to do some documentation and then put this on the Open Lab. So I'm going to start by just documenting my new player inside the scene. So I'm going to launch the scene. Oh, whoops. That's what happens when I launch the player scene instead of the main game scene. The player just falls and I don't see anything. So remember, I have to go back to the main scene and then play it again. And there's my player. I could capture this with some video if I wanted to, but I'm not going to go over that right now. I feel like I've already gone over a lot of stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and take a screenshot. So for Windows, I'm going to use the Xbox game bar. If you're on a Mac, I would just hit Command Shift and 4 and then space and then click on the window. But for Windows, I can hit Windows key G. Oops. Oh yeah, that opens up my Xbox game bar capture thing. So I'm going to just capture the window and then go to see my captures. Let's see, did it show up? Not here. Okay, let's try that again. So I'm going to go to the capture and click capture. See my captures. Oh, I didn't click on the right thing. Okay, so it didn't work because I had hit the Windows key too quickly. So I need to make sure to select the window first, then hit Windows G. Now I can capture, go to my captures, there it is with my new character. So I'm going to open this file location. And now I'm done with the game bar. And I can delete these screenshots I did by accident. So there's my new screenshot, but I'm also going to post the art that I created in this to document it. So to do all that, I'm going to go up here to the browser and go to the Open Lab. And I need to log in first, of course. Okay, and so I'm going to create a new post. So I'm going to click on the plus button. And for this one, this is actually two different components. This is our art, character animation, and character design. So we're going to do both of those at the same time this week. And so now I'm going to say my game character. And I'll start with, so let's actually demonstrate drag and drop this time because I did the block last time. So if I want to add in this new thing, I can drag it over here, but it's a little tricky. I have to get, yeah, see that didn't work. I have to make sure to get this like little blue line. So yeah, there we go. So if I get this line, then it's going to work. It's a little weird. You have to get it in the exact right spot. So there's the line, paste it in. There we go. So there's my character in Godot. And now let's add our design. So my 3 character designs. And so for this one, I'm going to do a gallery. If I have a lot of images, sometimes it's nice to do a gallery. So I'm going to click on gallery, go to upload, and I'm going to go to my art folder, which is on my desktop in my game, art, character. Here's my 3 character designs. I'm going to click open. And there they are. They look good. With the gallery, there's some settings you can play around with if it doesn't look the way you want it to. Where's that? Maybe it's over here. I thought it was over here. Block, styles, image settings. Maybe WordPress took some of this stuff out. What if we do rounded? Okay, that kind of looks better. Borders, frame. Oh, you know what? No, I'm in the wrong place. I want to be editing the gallery. How do I do that? Did I make a gallery? I feel like I screwed this up somehow, but let's try making another gallery. So those are my 3 character designs, and then my character animations. Okay, so let's try again. I'm going to make another gallery. And this time I'm going to upload, but I'm going to go to the game, right? And choose my 4 animations. And now, oh, they look weird. What is it? Something weird is happening with WordPress. Okay. What does this button do? Oh. Oh, okay, here's my gallery settings. So I'm going to do 4 columns, no crop images. So the images are really small. And then I'll write my gallery caption. And if I really want to, I can put these in a different order. So I can move the idle over here, idle, move the walk. These menus are kind of hard to use. They keep bouncing all over the place. But anyway, walk, jump, and hit. And so let's preview that. Okay, so my 3 character designs and my character animations. looks pretty good. You can see that the animations look kind of blurry because WordPress is using like regular filtering on these. I don't know if there is a way. Let's see if we can add some CSS in here. Let's see, image. What is it called? What is the CSS for image render? Image rendering. Pixelated. That's what we want. You guys don't have to do this. I was just curious. So what if we say image rendering? Yeah. Okay, so yeah, if I say pixelated, now it looks normal. So you don't have to do that, but if you want it to look the way it normally looks, you can add a little bit of CSS. I'll put that in the channel. Let's see, CSS pixelated images. Okay. So now let's publish this. And yeah, that's all you have to do. You can view your post and that all looks good. Okay, so that's everything for the character design and animation assignment. I'm gonna stop recording, but this will be due next Tuesday. So we'll have today and Thursday to work on it. I'm gonna stop